I'm Dr. Anita Johnston. I'm the author of Eating in the Light of the Moon and co-founder of the Light of the Moon Cafe. And I'm so glad Maria invited us to come.
And you're a PhD psychologist and a wonderful workshop leader. I'm Francie White.
Dr. Francie White.
Oh, that's right. Recently, Dr. Francie White. I was a registered dietitian specializing in eating disorders and exercise and body image disorders. And now I am still wear that hat sometimes and do a lot with consciousness and the nature of reality and philosophy. So,
and an amazing workshop leader.
We're happy to be here, and I understand there's some questions that you have.
Yes. So for Francie, Jessica would love insight on why she's still resistant to exercise, even though she has found a form that she loves, which is pole dancing.
Oh, I love that. Pole dancing. What a creative, live spirit you must be. Well, the answer is a little on the longer side, just because there are several phases of treating exercise resistance. So finding what one really loves to do is not the only answer. It kind of comes later for a lot of people. What's super important is, number one, to start with kind of going with the resistance and not fighting it. Just put your feet up instead of trying to get out there and exercise. And during the time that one is exploring or putting their feet up and going with the resistance, it's a time of a lot of exploration. And so I have a series of questions I ask people, but basically they involved going on a timeline and really looking at where the big shifts occurred, from playing to working out, or what happened during puberty, how sexual development, may have affected exercise, looking at things like, were you ever an elite athlete with a super difficult coach, like often with ballet or gymnastics. So it involves really going along a journey of inquiry and figuring out what series of things happened to eclipse your exercise drive. Because unless you do, those things stay in the unconscious and you'll still feel all the resistance, even though you found something you've loved. So in fact, one of the questions is, what does the word exercise bring up for you? And I have people do, the free writing and really kind of let themselves explore more deeply what some of the associations are to moving their bodies. Sometimes there's been trauma, abuse, sweating, doesn't feel safe. There are just so many important, excellent reasons why people find themselves resistant. And often there's quite a rebellion, there's like, we don't need to be told to exercise. Women will move their bodies. It's when this authoritative presence came along and like, you should diet, which is not true, and you should exercise, that people who tend to be more rebellious or didn't enjoy doing that got more resistant. So I always say, don't tell a woman she can't have chocolate, and don't tell a woman she should exercise. We have a she-wolf inside, this sort of archetypal wild mammal that will start rousing and taking us hostage in a variety of ways, including overeating at times. So then there's a phase of really exploring what one wants to do, right? And that involves a lot of visualization. And this, you as Jessica already know what it is you enjoy. But then there's also the decision, the ritual, a marriage to your body. So what happens with the resistance is there's been a divorcing, there's been a separation or a split off from one's natural female mammalian drive to move. And so the idea is that we need to actually make a very deep and powerful spell breaker, kind of a very deep and powerful commitment, and think about that ahead of time and what would that look like. And so we've done many versions of that in groups. People can do it on their own. but it's like a wedding to oneself, one's true inner mover. And that means ideally deciding to stay with it. It can change, but to stay with the relationship to your body through some kind of movement, not every day, for the rest of your life. And so that's a very big decision to make. And that often comes with a lot of writing, sometimes to music, a soundtrack people can put together. They can write poetry. There's a lot of getting support for that or wanting to be alone. And then after that, we set up, and I need to finish the book on this because a very, very definite plan that then brings in things that people wouldn't even dream of, like the exercise physiology that explains how to work with the feelings that are happening, why, the pain, if there's pain, or why certain muscles feel certain ways. And finally, also really learning a lot about just habit, forming habits and how to keep a habit. But these are what people try to use, habit change and encouragement, early on, as though that's going to fix the problem, and it doesn't even touch it. We bring that in at the end. And ideally, people find that they stay with themselves through movement as a gift to themselves for the rest of their lives. So maybe some of that will be helpful for Jessica.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling she's going to have more questions, but one was what you said at the beginning, is to just be with the resistance and put her feet up. And I have a feeling she might wonder, like, how long would that need to, like, what does that look like? And
for some people, it really varies. But what's funny is just telling someone, when I tell someone you're not allowed to exercise, I want you to put your feet up. They're like, I want to go right now. It makes me want to go out. So that paradoxing is really important. And for a lot of people, it tends to be between 2 weeks and several months of really doing the exploring, the self-inquiry. There's a series of questions I'm happy to email people. I have a short ebook on this that we'll do for now. So it's an ebook proposal. It has a lot of the inquiry, and as long as that takes until there's a restlessness to move to another level.
okay, great. I can share that too. So,
and this is Maria Ripa, who's out there asking the questions, therapist in Seattle, who's a partner in crime here.
What I love about what you've done, and Francie coined exercise resistance syndrome, by the way, is you brought in this idea that there's meaning, often really deep, profound meaning in that resistance. It's not like you're resisting because there's something wrong with you, or you're lazy, or it's none of that. And that's what's so exciting when you start to do this process, is you get to find out amazing things.
Yeah.
It's really pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, you can really trust yourself. If you're not moving, there's maybe a lot more to the story, and the discovery of parts of yourself that you weren't connected to is pretty cool.
Yeah,
including the part we call our earth suit.
so through exercise resistance, they could do some more uncovery work.
There you go.
Exactly.
Maria termed the term uncovery as a recovery, uncovering the true self, and that's a beautiful, fun.
And what an opportunity that presents.
Yeah. And what I think is that you discover that the inner rebel can lead the way, because that's her job. Her job is to make sure you're your authentic self, not, a lemming following everybody else, and everyone's into this activity, so I should get into that activity. It's like your resistance is part of your inner rebel, and she's not going to let you not be authentic. I love that.
That is so, I don't know if I've ever had that thought before. I'm sure I've heard you say it, but you just said your inner rebel can lead the way to, her job is to make sure that you're not anything but your authentic self.
Exactly, right?
I love that.
Yeah, she's your best part.
Oh, so good. Okay, here's another question from Malia. So this is along the exercise resistant lines. I want to know why I'm exercise resistant since quitting purging. Like I stopped both at the same time, and she said about a year ago. I've always been active. My whole life, I have enjoyed being active and moving my body, but I can't even muster up the desire to go for a walk around my neighborhood. I mean, maybe you already addressed it, but I guess I'm just wondering if there's anything that you would add.
I think we could both maybe take a stab at that. I mean, for so many, exercise gets connected to weight loss, to burning calories eaten, or to weight maintenance, instead of gaining weight, let's say, from perceived overeating. And so if exercise is ever done for the primary reason of body image change, of weight loss, it will die. The inner rebel, our inner soul, will not stay interested in it, and it will pull the plug on our motivation. And so congratulations on stopping purging. That's an enormous step. And somehow that may have gotten linked to not using exercise for weight thoughts or for after a binge, whatever, I'm not sure. Otherwise, I might write about that because the question's there. The answers are there. Do you have anything you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot in the similar lines like that. It's like, well, what was the function of the purging? And if it was connected to weight loss or changing your body, and that it may very well, since they stopped at the same time, be connected to the exercise. And so it's almost like the master switch. You turn it off, if they're connected, they both go down. As well they should, right? Because if you've been moving your body to lose weight or to change its form rather than simply for the joy of movement, it should stop. And you can start over in a whole other way, in a way that's connected to joy, not weight loss.
Right. It almost like has to be a rebirth. That's what that ritual is. It's a rebirth of your whole exercise life. And it can start with like, I'm going to move my finger from the inside out, not the outside in. And that's a big deal. It's really exciting.
It's really sounding, it might be funny that I'm saying this from the side. It's like this phantom voiceover.
She's right here.
But like what I'm hearing you say is if you were exercising in order to become what you think you're supposed to be or look how you're supposed to look, then that inner rebel is going to resist because that's not lined up with your authentic self. And so we have to find what would be the reason that's lined up here that I would want to move in a joyful way.
Right.
I love that.
Pole
That's
dancing.
good. Pole dancing. Yes. Okay. Another question is from Mary. I'm curious to find out why it's so difficult to stop or redirect myself when sugary sweets or chips are in my line of sight. It almost seems like I'm hypnotized by them and can't stop myself from consuming them.
Yeah, I love that you say almost like I'm hypnotized, because in a way you are. There's almost like this trance-like state that you can step into because the urge is coming from someplace else. I happen to believe it's coming from, believe it or not, a wiser part of yourself that is trying to let you know what your true desires are. But the problem is this part of ourselves doesn't speak in English the way we talk right now, right? So it's trying to communicate something, but it's speaking to you through symbolism and metaphor. And so what could be going on? So is that some information is trying to come to you, trying to come into your awareness, but it's coded and you have to crack the code. Now, we're all different. So there's different reasons for different meanings attached to different foods for each of us. But there are some general categories. So for example, sweet foods. Typically, if I were wanting to eat sweet foods and I wasn't hungry, because if you're hungry, sweet foods, but if it's like or I'm continuing to eat after I'm full, I would look to see where in my life is there not enough sweetness? Or in what way am I not feeling like I'm sweet enough? So you might want to think about what sweetness means to you and how you use that word. Like, oh, she's such a sweetheart, or sweet, or how do you use that word? Because it holds some clues for you. And the same with crunchy, salty, typically is connected with unexpressed anger and frustration. Like you want to bite someone's head off, but it's not expressed. And so this part of you is, I call it your soul self, is trying to bring some things into your awareness, but we take it so literal that we think it's about the food. So you might want to ask those questions of yourself. It's the inquiry that Francie was talking about. It's an opportunity to really go within and see, just like in a dream. For example, if you're having a dream and you take the dream so literal, I mean, everyone says, well, my dream is crazy. I had this crazy dream. Well, yeah, all dreams are crazy because they're not talking to us in this language. So until you can work out what the symbolism is, it just seems ridiculous. And so these urges, let's say, to binge when you're not hungry, it's almost like a waking dream. And that's why you mentioned being hypnotized, right? Because you're almost in this altered state, and it requires a different kind of language to understand what's going on.
I have a little bit of a, science to add to that. So not to take one bit away, absolutely. Following Anita, is that the food industry has spent a lot of money creating sweet and salty, crunchy foods so that we get an extra hit of dopamine compared to eating a, chicken thigh or a carrot. And so these foods can be really concentrated with elements they've snuck in there to particularly stimulate our brains, and particularly the left hemisphere, which does tend to be less rational. It just goes kind of on autopilot. And anyway, so just to know that that's also going on to further be aware of while you're exploring the real meaning of this kind of eating.
What does a person do then? So they're getting this dopamine, get this dopamine hit, and then the left brain that's just kind of on autopilot's like, I want more of that. Like, what does somebody do if that is the cycle that's happening? Is there, I don't know, do you have
so many things, but you want to go ahead and then?
Well, I just want to throw in one thing is get curious. Curiosity is your friend. And I would add compassionate curiosity. As soon as the judgment comes in, forget it. You're not going to go where you want to go with this. It's like if you had a little kid and you said, why'd you do that? You're not going to get the truth. They're going to tell you what they think you want to hear or what they're supposed to say. But if you ask the exact same question, why'd you do that? The answer you get will amaze you. So I'm suggesting that this inquiry that Francie's talking about is put on your scientist hat or your detective hat or your journalist hat. You're gathering data. You're trying to get some information, and you got to stay open to it.
Absolutely.
I'd add that.
Yeah. And as wearing the dietitian nutritionist hat, I noticed working with overeating that, in addition to all the psychological meaning that there is in any given eating experience that can feel out of control, I also like to make sure that people are really well fed. So a lot of times when someone's struggling with overeating and particularly highly processed foods and they're on a roll, I like to encourage them. I work with them to add in some really hearty, full fat, whole foods, that are satisfying, to make sure they're actually getting well nourished and a lot of cravings aren't happening just out of restricting and trying to diet or save calories. So, that's just one of many things. So it's complicated. But after, like you said, Anita, observing and noticing, wow, I had a full omelet with salmon and toast with butter and this and that, and I still wanted those chocolates or jelly beans just as much, or not after feeding myself well. So it's just sort of putting that detective hat on is absolutely, you'll get your answers.
I love the whole idea of like the body is speaking to us. It just doesn't speak English. It kind of makes you stop and just go, what's my body trying to communicate instead of fight? You know, we fight so hard against the part of us that wants to eat or is resisting. And it's really a turning towards and going, what is this foreign language that I've never learned? How can I learn the meaning? I love it.
And body speaks the language of sensation. So really learning to tune in instead of tuning out, you know, finding your hunger and satiety signals and then noticing what foods, you know, give you that satiety and which ones don't or don't as quickly. And that's all part of this language of sensation and then symbolism and metaphor.
And I can hear several of my clients saying, but I don't want to tune in and pay attention. I do this to escape, to numb out, to fall asleep. And so that one can observe and know, you know, if you know you're going toward a food to, like anyone would with an addiction to anything that causes us to just dissociate from day-to-day reality, which can just be overwhelming, then you can observe yourself wanting out. And then that's a really good dynamic to process with your therapist.
Yeah, like just asking, I want to zone out. I want to go into a trance. I want to be hypnotized. How come? And how come I want that now in this moment? Because right there, with that noticing, you've opened a window to finding out some amazing information. It's like, okay, I wasn't thinking that or feeling that 20 minutes ago. What's the difference? What's going? So it's an opportunity to learn and connect with like a ton of information that's waiting there for you.
I think something too that was so important for me in my process was that becoming curious doesn't necessitate that I don't do the behavior. Like there were so many times where I was like, I can't not eat this, but I'm going to be curious while I'm doing it.
Right, exactly.
You know, I couldn't, so.
No, forget it. Yeah. Don't expect yourself not to follow through with doing it.
Yeah. Go get the food, but eat it consciously and deliberately with every smidgen of curiosity that you can muster. I wonder, okay, I love this. Oh, I love that. Okay, what is it about that? Just be curious while you're eating the food.
Such a compassionate approach of self-discovery. I love it. Thank you guys so much. Is there anything else you want to add in before? Maybe let them know where they can find you.
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, I can be found. My name is spelled Francie, Francie, last name White, White, at that name, www.com, franciewhite.com. And there's lots of resources there and a link to my email. So,
and you have a blog post or something with those inquiry questions about exercise resistance on your site, right? Yeah, I'll post a link to that.
I think I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was an interview or something.
Yeah.
It's there.
I have, but I do have this ebook proposal. It's, double spaced, like 80 pages. So it's
amazing.
Still a lot. And it's in process, so it's not edited and it's what it is, but it's a start while I work on the book.
Yay.
Yay. And Anita?
You can find me in two places. One is my website, dranitajohnston.com, DRANITAJOHNSTON.com. And then you can also find me at thelightofthemooncafe.com. And that's where I have a whole series of self-study courses for learning how to work with metaphor. I have interactive courses where we have daily activities for 8 weeks with a forum and live calls, and I respond to all the questions and comments on the forum. So there's a lot of different things. Oh, I have a quiz you can take. So you can look at the foods that you might restrict or you might binge, take the quiz, and it'll give you some ideas about what might be going on for you.
There's so much going on in that
Mhm.
cafe. I highly recommend considering joining in and putting some work in with Anita.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I second that. Okay, thank you guys so
All right.
much.
Let's
Bye,
see if we can
everyone.
figure out how to
Bye-bye.
end
Have a good rest
this.
of your day.